You've read the books, you know the frameworks, you can quote atomic habits, explain the difference between deep work and shallow work, tell someone why they should front-load their mornings and guard their attention like capital. And none of it works. Not consistently. Not the way it works for the people you see executing at a level you want. And the comfortable lie you've been telling yourself, that you just need the right system, the right habit stack, the right routine, is keeping you from seeing what's actually broken. Discipline doesn't work when your identity is still wrong. Not because discipline is a bad concept, but because discipline is downstream of identity. What you do consistently follows what you believe you are. And if there's a gap between the identity you're performing, the person who reads the books, knows the frameworks, talks about execution, and the identity you actually carry, the person who's still at the level where decisions get made automatically, believes he's someone who needs a push, who needs conditions to be right, who isn't quite ready yet, then every discipline system you install is being run by the wrong operating system. And it will fail, reliably, predictably, and you'll blame the system. Let me tell you about Daniel, 35 years old, 4 years of podcasts about high performance, a bookshelf that looks like a self-development curriculum, morning routines he'd built and abandoned 6 times. He wasn't lazy. He'd put in more hours of intentional improvement content than most people put into formal education. But his output didn't reflect his input, and he couldn't explain why. He told me once, "I know everything I'm supposed to do. I just can't make myself do it consistently." That sentence tells you everything. Make myself. The self doing the making and the self being made are the same person. And that person has 2 identities in conflict. The identity Daniel was building, organized, disciplined, high output, consistent, was sitting on top of an older identity that hadn't been replaced. The identity of someone who needs external structure to function, who needs a manager, a deadline, a consequence to actually move, who needs conditions to be favorable before committing. That identity was formed over years, maybe decades, of operating in systems that provided all those external inputs. School, jobs, routines imposed from outside. And when he removed those external inputs and tried to operate on self-directed internal structure, the old identity won. Every time. Because it was older, deeper, and more automatic than anything he was trying to install on top of it. Here's the thing about identity that makes it different from habits or routines. You can't build new identity on top of old identity and expect it to hold. You have to dismantle the old one first. Not erase it, understand it. See precisely where it was built, what it was built to protect, and what it would mean to stop operating from it. Most men skip this step. They go straight to building the new system, installing the new habits, structuring the new mornings, and they get results for a few weeks, until something disrupts the structure. Stress, a life change, a bad week, and the old identity takes over because it never got replaced. It just got covered. The question Daniel needed to answer, the question you probably need to answer, isn't "what should I be doing?" It's "who is doing the doing?" Because if the person doing the doing still believes, below the level of your conscious self-talk, that there's someone who reacts rather than initiates, someone who performs when watched rather than when unseen, then you can have the best system in the world, and it will still run through that filter. And that filter will corrupt the output. Dismantling old identity isn't therapy. It's not about excavating your childhood or finding someone to blame. It's about recognizing the precise patterns that make you someone who acts in certain ways automatically before you get to choose. Seeing those patterns clearly is the first step. Not because awareness magically changes behavior, it doesn't, but because you can't interrupt what you can't see. and most men spend years trying to change what they do without ever looking at what they automatically are. Daniel didn't fix his identity by reading another book. He fixed it by doing something he'd been avoiding for 4 years, starting something he wasn't ready to start, with no guarantee it would work, in the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be. That gap is the only place where identity actually changes. Not in the books, in the action, in the evidence you generate for yourself by acting like the person you claim to want to be before you feel like that person. If you want to stop watching your discipline collapse predictably and start building something that actually holds, the Untamed Mind protocol was built for this. The ebook, The Mind That Executes, breaks down the 4 sabotage patterns that make consistent execution impossible for men who intellectually know everything they should be doing. The daily performance dashboard creates external structure that converts what you know into what you actually do, one day at a time. The reprogramming audio operates at the identity layer, not affirmations, not motivation, but a systematic process for building the identity that makes discipline automatic rather than a daily battle. The link is in the description. You don't have a discipline problem. You have an identity problem. And that's actually better news. Because identity, unlike habits, doesn't need perfect conditions. It doesn't need motivation. It doesn't need you to feel like doing it. It runs automatically. Build the right one, and discipline stops being something you enforce and starts being something you express.